Good afternoon, all. We'll call the October 21, 2024 meeting of Greenwood Board of Public Works to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rutherford.
Here.
Mr. Hoover.
Here.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Minutes of our last meeting of October 7, 2024. We're going to continue those until our next meeting at November 6th. So first on our agenda then will be Thomas Loudermilk, 509 Pleasant Run Drive. Mr. Loudermilk, are you with us in the audience or online? Mr. Loudermilk? I don't see him on. Do you have anybody online? Listed
I
online?
don't have access to mine. It doesn't look like it.
Okay. Well, we will table that until we come back if necessary. Next is Deputy Mayor Terry McLaughlin with the vehicle purchase request.
Good evening, Terry McLaughlin, Deputy Mayor. Here to ask for ratification in regards to a vehicle that was, I think, approved earlier on in the, maybe earlier this year. This would be for fleet director who's out of town, so filling in for him. But it was approved. It did come in, I believe, more than what the cost was originally quoted. In fact, it was about 6 months ago. So needs to come before you to ask for ratification.
Is that on the Ford Maverick?
Yes.
The motion to ratify that.
So moved. Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Liz. Ms. Vest. Human Resources, good evening. Good afternoon, whatever this is.
Good evening. Good evening, gentlemen. Lisa Best, Director of Human Resources. I bring in front of you this evening a resolution number 24-10 with respect to a city cell phone stipend. We are actually updating the way the cellular phone stipend is being completed. Previously, it was the IT department that took care of the stipends for those city employees that have authorization to utilize their city phones for legitimate business purposes. Right now, what we're going to do is we're asking to update this policy so anyone who is approved to utilize their personal cell phone for legitimate business practices has an actual certificate approving that person to be able to utilize their city phone and receive a stipend for use of their personal phone. Also, when turning in the cellular phone invoices for that stipend, there must be a certificate of authenticity to accompany that invoice. And basically, the certificate of authenticity is stating that this invoice is a true and accurate copy of my invoice. And so we want to make sure that not the controller's office nor department head can attest that that cellular phone invoice and information is correct. So we want to go ahead and do that as well.
You've provided us, Lisa, with the expected request form and certification form. Correct? Are those new or are those just updated?
Those are new forms, yes.
Questions from Ms. Vest? Hearing none, is there a motion to pass resolution 2410?
I would move for approval of resolution 2410. Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. And Sonia, do you have the original of that request? Resolution, excuse me. Call it down here, we'll get that signed. Next on our agenda is Megan Yagi from Restore Old Town Greenwood. And Mr. Hayes. Good afternoon / good evening.
Hello, thank you. Hi, I'm Megan Yagi with Restore Old Town Greenwood. This is the repeat ask for the noise waiver for our final Friday event. We went ahead and submitted for October as well as November. Same places as it had been previously, the spots.
We're also here for ratification of the range.
Of last Friday. Questions for Megan? Hold on.
I would move that we approve the request.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Continued good luck with that.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Bawa, for a reception issue.
So, this is the one I talked about, last week, after council left, he thought that his noise ordinance waiver would cover both, his daughter's event and the groom event, both of them take place at the same time, but two different locations. Since the groom's family is flying in from New Mexico today, they're not here to represent him, he's busy with the wedding, so I told him I'd bring it to the board. It's the exact same.
I think we did.
So it's the exact same event, just a different location.
Where is this? Where's this?
This one is. That did not protect us. It is a residential address again. He did say that they're still handing out flyers for that as well to both the neighbors.
Many parades.
No parade, it's just some live music, again from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Issues with the crowd and parking and things like that.
I think most of it's still gonna be local, it's just the group's in-laws are the ones flying in, so it shouldn't be too many extra people outside of the neighborhood.
Further questions for Ty?
I move that we approve the request.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you, Ty. Next, we'll talk to Kenley Horn from Worsville Road Mass Grading of Public Infrastructure. We report. Talk again from last meeting. Good evening, Ian.
I got a faster on this one, I can focus in.
Well, where are we at on this?
On the other side.
Technical issues.
Oh, so she.
Mark, you have all the. About a long time.
There.
I'm creeping.
Okay. Thank you. Apologize about that. So good evening.
Good evening.
Nathan Barr, Kenley Horn. This is a stormwater waiver that was from last meeting. What we are pursuing is an overflow route waiver request for Pond 2. This project is on the southeast corner of US 31 and Worsville Road. And as you can see in the schematic, this is the overall development that's proposed. On the west side is US 31, to the north is Worsville. We are proposing a new drive that runs generally north-south within the development, as well as an east-west leg connected to Declaration Drive. I do have a closer image. This is zoomed in on the kind of northern half, what I had just shown you. Pond 2 is the pond that is kind of generally into that southwest corner of the page, that irregular shape. It is separated by that east-west leg road south of it, as well as the north-south road to the east of it. So there is no good route to have. What we typically have is an overflow weir for the overflow routing. What code requires is 125% of the incoming flow to have an overflow route once you exceed the 100-year pond elevation. And because of the two roads separating, the best route would be to go over top of the existing road and into Grassy Creek.
So we've got 4 waiver requests before us, is that?
No,
Oh, we already granted.
Well,
Just
lot
the
three,
one.
just
Just the
the
one.
last one is done, okay.
We continued it to allow time
Right.
for him to get with the city staff.
Yeah, and then there's another stormwater waiver request after this for a different project, guys.
So you're saying 100-year flood would
Come over the road and they did it.
Well, that is what code requires. This pond was oversized in both for generating earthwork for the outlots as well as for channel protection volume. So no, the 100-year storm will still be contained within the pond. We actually are in the back-to-back 100-year storm. So the 100-year storm is going to happen generally once every 100 years. We model it as if it will happen 2 times in a row before the first event finished. And in both cases, it was still not over top, but God forbid something did happen, it would overtop the road and into Grassy Creek. And a plan update from what we did not show before is we are now showing armor effects. It's commonly requested by Greenwood for these overflow meters at the low point of where it would overtop the top of bank in an emergency flood route condition.
Mark?
Yeah, so I've talked to Kimley Hard and Nathan Barr over the last week. They provided me some additional information that I don't know was as obvious to me 2 weeks ago. They've also added this Armor Flex, which I've requested. Engineering staff is recommending approval of this waiver request. As Nathan said, the pond can handle 2 back-to-back 100-year flows. They've essentially shown where the emergency flood routing will be. It'll be directly over the road into the creek. It's not uncommon in at least residential subdivisions for public right-of-way to be used as emergency flood routing. That's basically when everything else fails, how do we get the water downstream to where it's supposed to go as fast as we can, as safely as we can. They've also shown that all the adjacent buildings will be well above any sort of flood grade, so they wouldn't be impacted if it overtops. I think that's generally it. Engineering is supportive of this.
Just for a point of clarification, 100-year flood doesn't mean it happens once every 100 years.
Correct.
It's a 1% chance of happening.
It's better to think about it in terms of probability. Think about if you roll dice, what's the chances you're going to roll 1 twice in a row? Technically, it's 1 in 6 every time you roll it, but back to back. Yeah.
I'm trying to zoom in on the approximate location of where it would overflow. See structures D7 and D8. It's on the northern half of that. That is the additional overflow here. It overtop the road application.
Pleasure of board.
I'd move for approval. I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And thank you for working with staff and getting that worked out. Appreciate it. And we have something else for, is it in this packet for Safeguard?
Yes, there's a second request for stormwater waivers from Safe Fire Section 2.
Is that being presented now? Mr. Burke, good evening.
Good evening, I'm Brandon Burke with HWC Engineering, office at 135 North Pennsylvania, Suite 2800, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. Give me a second as I get a little organized. If needed, I have handouts. I did bring a USB drive for some PDF exhibits, and my design engineer, Keith Sternberg's online as well virtually in case he needs to share a screen if we need to keep dialing in to have conversations and discuss stuff. Also with me tonight is Mr. Gerard with Pulte Homes. And we're here requesting a 4 stormwater waivers, variances, excuse me. I'm not sure if I'm gonna know how to work this.
IT may be able to assist.
It's on this side. It's on the side where you're close where your hand is, right?
Individual PDFs. Just not gonna get that out of it. I will start with the initial waiver request, and by all means, if you have questions, want to interrupt me, please just let me know. The first one is, it involves the percentage of a wet detention pond at 10 foot of depth. The standard reads facilities designed with permanent pools or containing permanent lakes shall have a water area of at least 1/2 acre with a minimum depth of 10 feet over at least 50% of the pond. Lake 6 with State Fire Section 2 is over 1/2 acre of the wet surface. However, when we calculate that, factoring in the required safety ledge at 18 inches deep, 10 feet wide, and then the bank slope down to the bottom, maximizing at a 2-to-1 slope so we can maximize the amount at 10 foot depth, we're below the 50% criteria. In which case, if you kind of reverse engineer and look at it, it could take a wet surface and the magnitude of 2+ acres to be able to make those numbers work. So based on this and the layout and the corner where the pond exists, so on your screen, you'll be able to kind of see the lake in question. So we have, to the best of our ability, maximize the overall footprint of the pond, and then taking into account the requirements of the safety ledge. And then we maximize the bank of the slope down to the bottom at a 2-to-1 rather than say a 3-to-1. The available depth, which is the inside contour of the 839 that's shown on the screen, that's in the range of 25% versus the 50%. So based on that, we would respectfully ask approval of that waiver.
Mark, your take?
I don't know if you saw the memo I prepared for you today. I pointed out in my memo that, as the petitioner notes, it is more difficult to meet Greenwood's pond size standards with smaller ponds. This is likely to discourage the use of smaller ponds whenever feasible, maybe to have larger ponds within the development instead of multiple smaller ponds. I also pointed out that our technical manual allows for a 10-foot naturally planted riparian buffer versus a pond safety ledge. So if the pond safety ledge is the limiting factor in this, perhaps they consider using that natural planting. I think the thought behind that is it'd be so big people wouldn't walk through it, be up against the edge of the pond.
So you do away with the ledge and then
Like natural grass.
Would you do away with the ledge or just?
Correct, you could have one, is what our standards allow.
So with, you'd be accepting of that if there was the natural planting.
Vegetative buffer, correct, yes.
what do you think about the Jeffrey?
It's interesting. So the rationale to have this is to keep the pond from getting stagnant.
Correct, yeah, so the deeper water doesn't get as warm. Warm water leads to plant growth, possibly limits aquatic life as well too, if that's something we're looking for in ponds.
And we are providing aeration.
That was going to be my follow-up
Yes,
was,
sir.
what type of variation are you?
It is a, sorry, I was not prepared for that specifically.
Well, I don't need to know the
Is
exact.
It's a bubbler, it'll be
Bubbler?
submerged.
Bubbler,
Yes.
that's all.
And it'll be properly designed to turn over the volume of water within a 24-hour period.
questions?
What are your thoughts on doing away with the safety ledge then? Would that get you closer to the percentage, obviously? But would it get you to that percentage?
I would have to calculate it, but my hunch with the size of the, I don't know that it would still meet it. I would have to check it. To have no safety ledge at all and just go down right from normal pool. Yeah, I mean, the other aspect is with it being a residential neighborhood, I mean, part of me does lean to having that safety ledge.
I agree with
Just
you.
in case for some reason somebody were to be there. It is somewhat closer to 5 Points Road. Just on the off chance anybody walking along that corridor were to go back there. And I understand plannings may discourage it, but to drop off right away, it's, I don't know, in my history in the design world, we tend to see the safety ledge.
I agree.
We had incident where 2 girls drowned on our pond, and there is a safety ledge, so that's not a guarantee either.
Yeah.
Be nice if you could.
What's the option? Well, I know, I mean, but denial, what is that? Leave us.
They would have to redesign the pond, probably lose lots or a lot. In the pond there. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would have to evaluate all those other options, and if, when I look at this incorporating the safety ledge and the bank, the size of the pond has to substantially get larger, and that's where the ordinance, depending on, I guess, how you read, it kind of leads with allowing a minimum size of 1/2 acre of a normal pool. But if you go through the criteria, you might find that it may have to be 2 acres to be able to meet the latter requirement. Majority of the jurisdiction I work in surrounding Indianapolis and throughout the state, the tendency for it to mention a 10-foot bottom, it's more in the 20-25% range, and that's if you're going to have a product. Having the additional depth can sometimes help with some upfront sedimentation, just as that kind of factor of safety. But with aeration and everything else, it's not uncommon to have ponds at 1/2 acre or 3/4 of an acre and not have, you know, I'm not used to seeing the 50% of the wet surface being 10 feet deep. It's usually a little bit less than that, in which case we fall in line with that.
Get this off the ground, I'd move for approval.
I'll say.
Further discussion? And all in favor, say aye.
Aye. It's your second waiver.
Yes. The second waiver is regards to the criteria of swale criteria, and I'll kind of read. The 10-year storm design flow for residential rear and side lot swales shall not exceed 4 CFS per second unless designed as a post-construction stormwater quality BMP, which this is not. The maximum length of the rear yard, side yard swales before reaching any inlet shall not exceed 400 feet and shall not convey flow from more than 3 lots. So out of that standard, I'm seeing 3 criteria just to kind of summarize. Flow criteria of a maximum of 4 CFS, a length maximum criteria of 400 feet, and the amount of lots to that swale at 3 lots. Of those 3 criteria, we're here tonight to respectfully request consideration for 4 lots to the swale portion. What we are providing from the flow standpoint, again, the maximum flow is 4 CFS. We have a total of 1.5 CFS going to this inlet in this swale. And when since it's 50-50 on each side, that's 0.75 CFS to this inlet. So that's considerably less than the maximum 4 CFS. The length of each segment of swale to the left and right of the inlet, which is more center of the screen. I wish I would add some color, I apologize. Structure 365, which is kind of the midpoint of the boulevard. You can see some temporary contours to the north that kind of extend from that location. But again, the maximum length of the swale is 400 feet and ours is at 189 feet. The only aspect out of this criteria we're just exceeding is the amount of lots to it. In which case, this swale is located in a common area. It's not on or inside of the residential lots. And what's unique about this is we have a boulevard that you see kind of going left, right, or east, west on the screen with the topography we have out there. The swale that we're talking about is to the north side of it. And I'm not sure if my pointer has enough. It's not gonna work on the screen. But essentially we have 4 lots to the left and 4 lots to the right. And they're the lots that are kind of in the middle of the screen, the swales just on the north side of the boulevard. So from a drainage perspective, none of the right-of-way corridor with the boulevard is draining to the swale. So from a drainage perspective, we have a minimal watershed to this inlet. And so it's kind of balanced to work with the grading. Sagebriar has a fair amount of topography across the site. So with it being located inside the common area, and another aspect I would bring up, the ordinance speaks to 3 lots maximum. It doesn't really speak to the size of those lots. If we had 90-foot wide lots, you know, based on that metric, we could go over 200 feet, over 250 feet too. So with unique thing with Sagebriar, with the senior living empty nester type product, the lots are 45 feet wide. So when you get into narrow lots and you kind of compare it to that metric, we have a lesser distance. So the 190, so again, that's why I speak to the 3 criteria from an efficiency of the overall design and infrastructure, with the low point being there and continuing our storm network to the north. We try to balance that. And without having lots on both sides of the swale, you know, the amount of surface area this swale's collecting is rather minimal compared to other locations. We have had a look at this in other parts of Sagebriar, and we have added additional infrastructure to take care of it. This just happened to be a unique situation we thought would be worth kind of exploring, considering the service area is minimal.
Is this swell between houses or behind houses?
Yeah, and I have to apologize with
It's a rear yard swale. What's unique about it is they're not typically think of like a block. Their houses are like 2 deep, right? There's one on either side. This is just single parcels. So they're not between houses, it's between the back of the house and the right of way, essentially.
You want me to share my screen?
Thanks, Steve. If you can, or I can approach and show you the exhibit and highlight exactly where we're talking about.
Yeah, I would generally agree with what Mr. Burke has said here. I suspect the reason our standard has a distance and a number of lots is to minimize the amount of lots an HOA or the stormwater department might have to cross in the future, and the number of property owners they have to coordinate with in the future. 3 to 4 is not a drastic change. As Mr. Burke acknowledged, it's 190 feet maximum while we allow for 400 feet, so it's within that 400-foot length range. So I'm comfortable when I recommend approval of this stormwater request.
Sufficient for me. So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Thanks for sharing the screen.
I don't know if it really worked.
You might be called upon again.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item waiver 2 passes.
Keith, you want to go ahead if you are sharing screen?
I'll try it again. Yeah.
If not, I can pull up a PDF and get back to it. The next waiver request we're here for tonight involves our water. We have 3 water quality units within Sagebriar Section 2. One based on the infrastructure and design, we were able to meet the standard there too that we are kind of asking for your consideration tonight. So the standard is manhole inlet inside sizing shall be according, that's not. So absent of other acceptable water quality measure, the downstream of structure prior to the detention basin that collects water from within the right of way shall be required to have 2 foot sump. The structure must also be located within 15 feet of the curb. And that's what I'm here to discuss tonight. Locating our water quality unit within 15 feet of the back of curb. And it does go on to say where practical. If this structure can be if the structure cannot be placed within 15 feet of the back curb, at a minimum, it must be located within an easement and be easily accessible for maintenance. In which case, both of the ones we're here to talk about are as close as possible to the back of curb, just behind the right of way. They are within easement and they are accessible from the street. If the last structure does not meet this criterion, then the inlet and structure, must be upset. Essentially, I believe it goes on to discuss potentially moving it further upstream in the storm network until you can meet that criteria. So basically, Keith, are you able to show the screen or?
I'm trying to. It says your screen sharing is paused for some reason.
If not, we can try to switch back to PDF.
Let me try one more time.
If Mr. Burke can pull up the location to show you so you can see it, that'd be great. But again, I would generally agree with this. I'm not even sure a waiver's needed on this one. The standard does say as practical. I think they are.
There we go.
As practical as they can be to the back of the curb.
Next
21 feet versus 15 feet.
It's in an easement. It's accessible. There's not stuff between it. I'm comfortable with this waiver request as well.
Is that for both of them, Mark, or just
It's for the waiver number 3, which is both of those water quality checks, number 8, number 10.
I move that we approve waiver 3.
Second.
further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. We're gonna get to use your screen sharing talent pretty soon, I'm sure.
Well, I prefer not to have to come back and ask for waivers. If I do, I will. Better now that I understand the setup. The last waiver we are here to discuss tonight has to do with the pond restoration. Might be familiar if this has come up with on other projects. Detention facility. I like the last sentence of the ordinance. It's a little bit more concise and sums it up. In other words, the design shall ensure that a minimum 90% of the original detention capacity is restored within 48 hours from the start of the design 100-year storm. The overall stage prior development has one discharge point from the overall community. It's located in the northeast corner at the Grubbs Ditch. You might zoom out. We have 8 detention ponds within our development, and they are all interconnected, flowing to the northeast corner to where we have a single outfall to the Grubbs Ditch. So what we have with 8 detention ponds, we have a lot of ponds in series. So when these ponds work in series, as the ponds fill up, right, they start creating tailwater conditions on each other. We have a release rate restriction to the Grubbs Ditch, so we are meeting the release rates. But what happens is, as all the water fills up and creates head on the other pond and slowly starts to push water through the system, you just can't release it as quickly as the ordinance standard is written. And the ordinance standard, based on my experience, is kind of written if you have a single pond and one pond and you're maximizing your release rate and it's not having some unusual tailwater condition on it to where the water can flow and maximize that release. So with the interconnected ponds, we almost always see this. We have 2 different systems from the southwest corner flowing to the east line, then north to the northeast corner, and then the northern part of the drainage, it kind of flows north and then east to the northeast corner. We did run back-to-back 100-year events because the intent of the ordinance is essentially to restore that volume for the next storm. And so we ran back-to-back 100 storm events, and we've shown that the system can handle that without overtopping. So we believe we meet the intent of the ordinance in providing that level of additional protection.
So what waiver would you need?
So this is, they don't return to 90% capacity within 48 hours for that pond. We see this one fairly often, and I think I've said it before, my preference for what that standard should be is probably modeling back-to-back 100-year storms. So I support this waiver.
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
That was all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay, again, Mark, you've got the. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about Menard Inc., Menard Store Expansion Gate Modification. Pat Wewell, am I pronouncing that even close to correct?
Wewell is correct. Good evening, folks. I'm Pat Wewell. I'm a real estate representative for Menards.
Tell us what we're doing here.
I am here regarding the Menards store expansion and gate modification project that was completed a number of years ago. So I am requesting acknowledgement of the completion of the improvements and a release of the performance guarantees.
Mark?
Everything is in order. The improvements have been satisfactorily installed, and engineering recommending release of performance.
Move for approval. For discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. That's pretty easy.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Next, we'll move on to the Aldi pavement rehab phases 1, 2, and 3. Maybe site maintenance team. Tyler or Christian? Anybody here on this matter? We can't see if they're okay. Mark, can you give us an update on this?
Yeah, this
Is
is
this
the
something we can do?
Aldi, I think it's distribution facility off Stop 18 Road. A number of years ago, it was like 2021, they did a pavement rehabilitation project on that parking lot, just basically work to restore the pavement. They had some performance bonds associated with that work. The work has been completed, it's been installed and inspected and found to be satisfactory, and we're recommending release of those performance bonds.
Move for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And Grand Vista Section 1, Richard Henderson is doing that one. Good evening. It is evening.
I'm here, as you said, for Grand Vista Section 1, requesting acceptance of the improvements for that project, as well as acceptance of the maintenance bonds, performance bonds, and hopefully execution of the final plat. There are a couple items that are still outstanding that Jack Weaver is going to inspect when he gets back from vacation, I understand.
So subject to,
Yes, yeah, there's, we can verify the perimeter monuments have been set. Receipt of updated as-bills and review and approval of those, and receipt of the Mylar and digital copies of the as-bills after we approve them.
well, I'll move for approval subject to those conditions just read by Mr. St. John.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And you do have the plat.
I do, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to stay with Green Vista, but Section 2 for Greg Venter. Are you going to handle it, or?
Greg, it's online.
Greg, okay. Good
I'm
evening.
here. Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. Yep. We are here for Grand Vista Section 2 for the acceptance of the performance guarantees and the acceptance and execution of the inspection and testing agreements.
Mark, I'm sorry, I didn't have access to your memo, so I should thoughts on this.
That's all right. This is the next section of Grand Vista. So we're recommending approval of the performance guarantees, and execution of the general and sanitary sewer inspection and testing agreements, and ratification and acceptance of 50% upfront fees for Grand Vista Section 2.
Unconditional?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All. Aye. Motion passes. And Greg Deerfield, section 2, if you're still with us.
Yes, this is for the sanitary acceptance. This was in Johnson County, a little bit of an outlier. So we are asking for the acceptance of the sanitary improvement, the maintenance guarantee, and the execution of the final plat.
Mark, your thoughts?
Yep, I agree with what Mr. Victor said. This is outside the city limits, so we're just looking for a performance guarantee on a maintenance guarantee on the sanitary sewers that's being constructed, to accept the sanitary sewer inspection and testing agreement and accept the entire fee due for that agreement, and to accept and execute final plat all for Deerfield section 2. Because it is outside the city limits, that plat will go back to Johnson County.
And with no conditions.
Correct.
I move for approval. Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, guys. Have a good. You too. Thank you.
Next, we go to Mark Adams, CPM Construction for Lockhart Cadillac Saturn Park. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for your service.
Well,
The more I watch on CNN,
Thank
the more I appreciate local politics.
Thank you for your patience.
So I'm here representing Lockhart Cadillac. We believe that we've met the closeout requirements for the project and are requesting acceptance of the improvements, acknowledgement and so forth. So that's the bright side is I brought no flash drives. I've got no pointer. Here's my pointer.
you've seen our technology issues this
Yeah.
evening, huh?
I've got no school myself, so.
Mark, is there any conditions to this?
Yeah, we're still working with them on receipt of the revised maintenance guarantees and review of approval of the same. I think there's been some back and forth with their bank on the standard form that we use. We would not release the performance guarantees we have in place until we're in receipt of those maintenance guarantees. That would be the only condition of it.
As a clarification too, that is by Lockhart, the owner. I'm representing CPM, and so we believe that we have fulfilled our requirements, subject only to the owner's maintenance.
Correct. Yeah, we're acknowledging that the installation of the improvements have been installed per plan and appropriately.
I move that we approve the request subject to that condition.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thanks. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Next, we're gonna go to Mr. Patel, for the Subway Bixby Coffee matter. Anybody here representing this matter? Mark, is it something you can help us with?
I can, yes. This is the old Captain D's on US 31, just south of the mall, south of Fry Road. They're asking for us to accept performance guarantees for their improvements, to accept and execute the general inspection and testing agreement, and ratify the acceptance of 50% upfront fee, and to accept and execute a public sidewalk easement grant. There's some sidewalk on this site that's not in the US 31 right away, it goes back on the other site. And we are recommending all that without any conditions.
So moved. Further discussion? Nice to have something in that site.
Is that building finished? Have they done that?
I don't think they
Yeah,
started anything
sorry.
on
I
it.
was gonna say, I haven't noticed anything.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, Rick Ellis, the engineers for Lincoln Place.
And this has actually been removed at the request of the petitioner.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to the audience. Is anyone online or in the room that wishes to address us? Hearing none, we'll move on to Terry with Corporation Council status of tasks.
I request a board approve Greenwood Police Department's item for auction. List continued to packet, and also approval of the contract with Christie's Perform Auctions, but conditions. I don't know about the department.
And the contract is the same as we've always done, correct?
I move for approval. Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Anything else from your office?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
The first item I have is our easement encroachment request docket. We have one easement encroachment request. It's request EN 2024-029 at 1217 Creekwood Drive. It is a fence encroachment into a rear yard drainage and utility easement. The engineering division is recommending approval of that with our the standard conditions we see on these fence structures.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item I have is a job description. I think this is the third meeting in a row I've had a revised CDS job description for you. If you haven't guessed yet, we're opening some new positions in CDS next year. There's going to be some movement of existing staff as well too. So this job description is for a position that will be called the permit technician. It is a job that's currently it'll be filled by a current CDS staff representative is the current plan. It's just kind of further delineating duties and reassigning staff.
We approve that job description.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item I have is Brighton Estates, section 4A and 4B. During inspection of some sanitary sewer in that area, our sanitation field office noted that there were sewer manholes that had been essentially knocked loose when they're doing home construction. We had reached out to the developer and the home builder and asked them about getting those repaired. We're not very confident in their response that those are going to get repaired. The maintenance bond is nearing at the end of its bond period of 3 years, and so we're asking that the board authorize the start of the drawdown on that bond process, just so we can get it repaired in case they don't work with us.
Is that this year?
It is insured.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Area. I walk down through there sometimes and there's no sidewalk. on the North side of
Of April
of
Drive.
April Drive.
So that'll be constructed as the homes are constructed. They don't build the sidewalk because the trades will tear the sidewalk all up as they build the homes.
But on the north side of the road, there is no construction. I mean, it is down at the corner, but there's a long section there coming off of that pond.
Yeah, there will be. It's a little deceiving too, because the way the lots are, there'll be some rear loaded lots. There'll be it doesn't look like it's going to be a front yard because there's no driveway access, but they will be front yards and that sidewalk will be constructed with our homes.
I move that we approve the request to draw down on the maintenance fund.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item I have is Grand Vista Section 1, asking that you authorize the mayor to sign the updated operations and maintenance manual for water quality for that development.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Motion passes.
The last two items we have are asking the board to authorize staff to obtain quotes for 2 pavement maintenance projects. We're actually going to remove the HMA Rejuvenator project based on available funding from the controller's office. So we're just going to ask you to authorize staff to obtain quotes for a 2024 crack seal project.
I move to approve the request for the pavement crack sealing project for
And-
2024.
And
No, rejuvenate. He said they were.
Correct, just the crack sealing. And we're looking up to $110,000 for crack sealing.
second? I'll second that. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's all I have tonight.
Mark, thank you. And we may not have the opportunity to meet you again in front of this board, but I want to thank you for your service to the city. Note that you will be greatly missed.
Thank you.
Appreciate you very much.
Right, that one for me.
Just one more. Go back. on
Yes,
this.
Mr. Loudermilk.
This one,
I
I
have-
know Mr. Lockhart, yeah.
He hasn't showed up
No,
yet.
I don't think it's on my list.
If he wishes to come back for that, he can go back on the next agenda or a later agenda.
I've already done it.
Great, didn't have anything. Further discussion for anything?
I would move that we accept the claims as given for approval. I'll get it.
I'll say.
Further discussion, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you all, we'll stand adjourned at 6:23 PM.